Thank you very much. I will be extremely brief because I think that the panelists have more things to say than me. First of all, good evening, and thank you very much to the colleagues from the press and other media to join us today for this press conference. Today is for us a special day because CIOMS celebrates its 70th anniversary. So, as you may know, the Council for International Organization of Medical Sciences is an international, non-governmental, non-profit organization established jointly by WHO and UNESCO in 1949. CIOMS represents a substantial proportion of the biomedical scientific community through its member organization, which include many of the biomedical disciplines, national academies of sciences, and medical research councils. The CIOMS mission is to advance public health through guidance on health research, including ethics, medical products development, and safety. Today was mostly dedicated to the patient involvement in the medicine's life cycle, and we had, I think we can say that, a very fruitful meeting gathering people from WHO, World Medical Association, regulatory agencies, academy, learned societies, and of course patient organization. We had also very interesting discussion and debate on the forthcoming challenges of public health and the role of CIOMS in this environment. So during the next 25 minutes, we will give the different stakeholders the opportunity to deliver a short message on this topic. And this will be followed by 30 minutes of a question and answer session. So I hope sincerely that today will remain a milestone in the history of CIOMS and patient involvement. And without delay, I will give the floor to the first speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hervé, for giving me the floor. My name is Dr. Lembitrago. I am the Secretary General of CIOMS, and I am just putting a couple of words what CIOMS stands for. First, it stands for the Council for International Organizations of Medical Sciences, and then you ask, what does it do? You know, it's an interesting creature, but what does it do? And I think CIOMS has been over the history, it's now 70, but I would say it's still healthy. It has been involved in 3 major areas of work. One of them is research ethics, more closely bioethics, ethics of involving the humans in health-related research, which we have been working closely with the World Medical Association, because people more know probably the World Medical Association Declaration of Helsinki. But we have been working hand in hand because Declaration of Helsinki is a very concise document. CIOMS document gives more rationale behind its guideline. It is more explanatory, and it's believed that it's great help for the ethics committees who look on the clinical trial applications to make the good ethical judgments. And we have been quite successful because these ethical guidelines have been translated into all UN languages practically. Arabic is still missing. I'm working on that. But also many languages even beyond UN languages like Ukrainian, Japanese, and I think we have a translation ongoing to the Bahasa. And just last week we had the CIOMS ethical guidelines launched in China and Shanghai. So they are now having also it available in Chinese language. Second is that if you want to benefit from innovation, and if we are patient, and we just discussed, we almost all are patient, not only the representatives of patient organizations, but many of us who are not patient organizations are still patients. And if we want to benefit from innovation, then you have to do clinical research, because it's still something that we can't avoid. And this is something that you have to have the ethical principles. But also now we are looking to the whole development cycle of the medicines. And CIOMS has been also doing some other bits and pieces in the drug development, but has had a side of the ethics also very big emphasis on the drug safety and pharmacovigilance. And this is also what we have done for the patients to protect them from, so to say, drugs doing the bad things and hoping that we can maximize the good effects from the medicines. But if we look backwards, we have been working for patients in a way, but we have never had patients involved in our working groups. So I think for us it's a milestone as well, because this is the first working group where we have the patient representation, very well established, good patient representation, and we are dealing with the patient involvement in the whole life cycle of medicines, which is from the very early stages of development up to the retirement from the market, because also sometimes drugs retire, they are withdrawn from the market because we have better drugs or they don't perform as we like. So this is what CIOMS has been trying to do, and I think I'm not trying to put more emphasis here what was CIOMS doing in the past, but I think we are extremely excited that it's really a change of the paradigm to have the patients more as partners and experts in working together to have better medicines through the cycle of the drug development and innovation. And I think we have here different stakeholders who can give light to from their perspective to the patient involvement in the drug development and safe use. So I'm stopping here. Thank you very much. So I think yes, we have.
Good evening, and I apologize for my voice. Can you hear me? Okay, so I could speak better this morning, but for some reason I can't speak so well now. So I'm Emer Cook. I'm the director responsible for regulation of medicines and other health technologies at WHO. And we see CIOMS as an important partner. And CIOMS has done a lot of work for WHO in access to medicines over the 70 years of its operation. So we very much welcome CIOMS' work now on patient involvement. At WHO, we take the view that patients should be involved throughout the life cycle of product regulation, from the R&D side, when we decide which products we actually need, right through to patient use and pharmacovigilance. But it's important that we coordinate efforts across the numerous actors to facilitate patient involvement in regulatory decision-making. So we have to raise awareness, we have to educate, we have to improve transparency and communication across all our regulatory and related activities. I'm going to give you two examples of some work that we're doing in the area where we need to involve patients. We're trying to strengthen our work on biosimilars. So biosimilars are less expensive versions of biotherapeutic medicines. And they have really emerged as effective treatments for a number of chronic and serious conditions. But they're still viewed as inferior to their originator counterparts in many countries by doctors and patients. So what we are doing at WHO is trying to assess some new biosimilars to prove their quality and safety and efficacy, and at the same time increase the information to patients and healthcare professionals, because this is also about building trust and knowledge. In the area of emergencies, for example, in the Ebola crisis in DRC, we're working with an experimental vaccine that has proven to be very effective. And the key to rolling this out in DRC has been to get community engagement, because otherwise the communities would not be accepting the vaccines, and there would be a lot more deaths than are there at the moment. It's a huge effort to build trust across communities, especially those that have lost confidence in their health systems, and they're often happier seeking help from traditional leaders. So really, to help us deal with emergencies, it's really important to get the community engagement. So this leads me to two key messages. When we think about patient involvement, we have to really look at accountability and transparency. So patients need to understand what their health system is doing for them and what regulatory authorities need to better explain the rationale behind their decisions and the importance of the work to improve access and safety. Communication is key to patient involvement, and here we think the media can play a key role. A lot of the regulatory work can be quite technical, and it's hard to translate it into easy language that patients and consumers can understand. But if you don't do this work, access to medicines and health products would be meaningless, because there would be no oversight and no guarantee of quality, safety and efficacy. So we need to get these simplified messages out to patients and consumers together. A lot has been done, but we've a long way to go to get patients fully involved in medicines regulation, particularly because of the end users and the safety is paramount. So we're really excited by the work that CIOMS is doing in this working group, and we're really pleased that media is joining this conversation more actively, and we look forward to continuing our collaboration here and with CIOMS. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then I think we should go to the patients and then other stakeholders, please.
Thank you. My name is Kaisa Immonen, and I'm Director of Policy at the Pan-European Patients Umbrella Organization in Brussels called the European Patients Forum. I was asked to say a couple of words from a European perspective. And I think it should be said that in Europe, it's now recognized, at least on the level of rhetoric, that patients' contribution to the development of medicines and their safe use is invaluable. Not a nice extra, but really a must-do for the regulators, for clinicians and practitioners, for researchers, and also for industry. Patients experience the direct impact of a health condition or disease on their life and the burden of that disease. And patients are the people who understand what priorities should be set for research in the first place. And patients also know what outcomes matter most to them, so that is an important contribution to setting the research questions and directing clinical research and development. And that's important particularly when we consider that these days there is a huge conversation going on about the value of innovation and the realization that innovation needs to be guided by patients' needs and society's needs, because our health systems have limited resources at their disposal and they want to obviously direct them where they are best used. So it's only with patients, I would argue, that one can actually achieve best value of the new therapies. Moreover, the regulators in the EU have, I think, been very much at the forefront of patient involvement. The European Medicines Agency now involves patients across the entire regulatory pathway. Patients are present in most of the major scientific committees. The EMA also has a dedicated working party for patients and consumers. Another example that I want to mention is pharmacovigilance, so monitoring the medicines' safety once they're on the market. Because patients have direct experience of the illness and as well as the treatment, they can be in the best place to evaluate its effectiveness or not. And their reports of adverse reactions are an invaluable added contribution to the pharmacovigilance efforts by national and European authorities. In fact, research shows that patients' reports are not only equal quality to healthcare professionals' reports, but also that patients are more likely to report adverse reactions. Professionals tend to under-report, so patients' reports are highly valuable. And they also help identify new adverse reactions more quickly. So this is actually recognized to the extent that direct patient reporting is now enshrined in the EU pharmacovigilance legislation, not least due to the efforts of patient organizations in pushing this forward several years ago. Now, that's not to say that everything is perfect. There is still a way to go, and at the national level, particularly, patient involvement is still quite patchy. There are gaps, particularly in health technology assessment in discussions around drugs pricing and reimbursement decisions and in policy making. There are quite a few barriers still that exist for patients to get involved at several levels. And I also think that we still need to work more on capturing the impact and the added value that patients do bring, because it doesn't always easily fit into quantitative assessments. So the fact that CIOMS is undertaking this effort as an international organization is fantastic, and we hope that the CIOMS guidance will give, from a very credible and long-established organization, a very strong message to all the stakeholders that patients' participation is actually essential, and will also show some of the hows in how to do it concretely in different areas of the health system. And so we are very pleased to be part of this effort and hope that it will contribute an important piece of the puzzle to really make patients' involvement a reality, not only in Europe, of course, but globally. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think now, as you from the European perspective made also reference to the regulators, then let's give the floor to the regulator who is not from Europe. So, Teresa, please.
Hello, my name is Teresa Mullen, and I'm the director, the Associate Director for Strategic Initiatives in the US FDA Center for Drug Evaluation and Research. And part of my job is to lead patient-focused drug development at FDA. And so we have found, and so this regulator, our perspective is that patients really have a unique and critical perspective to inform drug development and decision making. And this begins with realization by the regulators that the patients are the ones who have the disease and that is being targeted for treatment. They're the ones who are going to take the drugs and suffer any adverse effects if there are any, and they're going to experience whatever benefits there are to accrue. And so this is critical information for a regulator to understand. What is their perspective? And so there are opportunities throughout the life cycle. And this begins before drugs are even going into clinic or being investigated in clinical trials. And the first question is, what are the impacts of the disease and the treatments people are taking today that really matter to them? What is the most important thing you can do to address that person's condition and that would matter the most to them, and how would you measure it in a trial? And another question that really needs to be considered is, what aspects of clinical trials really need to be tailored to meet the needs of patients? We understand from patients that, if a trial is too far away, or if it's got too many tests and it's too burdensome or hard to participate, even if they begin, they will drop out of the trial, and that creates missing data, which means there's greater uncertainty about the effects of that product. And so it's important that the trials are ones that patients are willing to enroll in and can stay in. Another consideration is patients' perspectives on benefit versus risk trade-offs, and what are meaningful benefits to the patient when you're making a review of an application. And finally, what would be useful information for a patient when they're trying to decide with their doctor whether or not to take a certain treatment? These are all important decision points, and patients have a critical role to play in informing those decisions. And so we think there's really a compelling need for greater awareness and more consistent engagement of patients throughout the life cycle, and to get their perspective. Now, regulatory agencies like FDA are developing regulatory guidance that will be used in our region, and other regulators are similarly, in many of them, developing guidance for their region. But this work that CIOMS is doing to produce a guideline that'll be useful globally will really encourage that engagement globally and really advance the work around the globe, and support the efforts and augment the efforts that are being done in different regions. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. And I think we heard now that in Europe and Northern America, things are moving because the patients are working with regulators and there is benefits coming from this cooperation. But we would like to also hear what is in other parts of the world from the patient perspective. And we have Regina. Can you give us some light to what's happening in other parts of the world?
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Regina Namata Kamoga. I'm the chairperson of the Uganda Alliance of Patient Organizations, an organization that brings together patients across different diseases: cancer, epilepsy, HIV, hepatitis, diabetes, hypertension, and others. I'm also the executive director for Community Health and Information Network. I'm very delighted to be here. And for me, I think this is an aha moment for me, because it's very difficult to be in a place where the whole day is committed to discussing patient issues. And especially from where I come from, where the patient is still looked at, in some instances, as a passive receiver of care. Maybe who doesn't have a body, just has a body but not a mind. Then on the other hand, you have the paternalistic view of the doctor knows it best, and engaging at an equal level with a healthcare provider is a crime of sorts. So this initiative comes very timely, and we cannot overemphasize the critical role of the patient, just like everyone has said, because when things go wrong, it's the patient who suffers harm. But where I come from, and especially the African perspective especially, the patients are still not yet recognized as key partners in healthcare, despite that all efforts are geared towards improving healthcare outcome. We are all working towards that, aren't we? But again, this issue is still gray. And I want to commend CIOMS for taking the lead in this, because we believe that this guidance is going to go a long way into informing our policymakers, the ministries, the relevant authorities in terms of, and just to say in Africa, we have classic examples of where the role of the patient has been very critical. We all know that the HIV movement, the HIV advocates, actually moved mountains from where patients did not have any medication at all. But we have classic examples of people that have lived with the disease for over 20 years. And indeed, these were efforts of HIV patient advocates being involved in clinical trials, advocating for access to medicines. So, like I said, we can't overemphasize the critical role of the patient. Again, we need also to look at the context of the African perspective patient. In many times, these are vulnerable patients, vulnerable in the sense that they have very poor access to healthcare. They are poor, low health literacy levels, low literacy levels. Access to medicines is very difficult, and many times they can't engage effectively because the medicines that they get are mainly funded by foreign donors, pharmaceutical donations and incentives. So it impacts on the way that they can effectively engage, because they are vulnerable. On the other hand, we have the dysfunctional healthcare system, which is also hampered with in terms of human resource capacity, we have very, very few doctors, like a ratio of one doctor to over 20,000 patients. We are burdened by both the communicable and non-communicable diseases. So all those issues actually do impact. So what needs to be done? We need to engage more effectively with the healthcare professionals. The relationship is still very bad as well. I'll tell you that many doctors in our country cannot engage effectively with an expert patient. They feel intimidated, and in the process, they will intimidate you. We have been chased out of meetings. We have been intimidated at different levels. So we still need a lot of education, engagement with the healthcare professionals and also the healthcare system to, again, I believe that the CIOMS guidance will help them understand the critical role and be able to influence policies in that regard. The pharmacovigilance systems in our countries are very poor. Low capacity in terms of technical capacity, funding, reaching the people at the community level, a lot of constraints, and as such, monitoring the drug effects even at that level is as well constrained. And what are we doing as patient organizations? We are working engaging with key healthcare stakeholders, engaging with WHO country office, ministries of health, the regulatory authorities, trying to, at the community level, we are working with the village health teams, trying to raise awareness about these issues. The other whole issue about involvement in clinical trials. There are a lot of misconceptions about this at the community levels. There are cultural, social-cultural aspects at the community level. So patient organizations' role has been to raise awareness, talk to people, give them information and telling them how important it is for them to be involved in the clinical trials, because at the end of the day, it's going to benefit us, especially with like the burden that I've talked about, both communicable and non-communicable. So again, we need more involvement. We need empowerment of the patient organizations, the community. It involves raising awareness and being able to engage so that people are empowered, because when they're empowered, when they know their rights and responsibilities, they are more able to engage at a certain level with the providers and the regulators. So for me, like I said, this is an aha moment for me, and I'm very privileged to be part of this, and I'm also very happy that we've had representatives from Africa, because our context is so unique, like a lot of issues, that some of the solutions that work here do not work for us because of some of the challenges that I've mentioned. But we're very happy to be here because we know that the input that we bring, the perspectives that we bring on the table will ultimately lead to improvement especially in our countries. And we believe that our leaders, because we also have a leadership issue, political and others, so we hope that this whole process will trickle down to that level and bring positive results. We definitely are happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Regina. And I think we have another very important stakeholder, because we are talking on getting the new medicines to the people. And who are those who do the development of these new medicines? It's industry. And we have a representative of industry in the panel who can put some views from the industry perspective to this endeavor.
Hi, my name is Meredith Smith, and I do work in the pharmaceutical industry. And CIOMS 11 sees that there is a really exciting opportunity here for industry to involve patients throughout the drug life cycle. Yes. So this is a real exciting opportunity for industry to be involved, to involve patients throughout the drug life cycle, beginning to understand what are those unmet needs they have for medicines and for medical treatment, moving on to understand what are the treatment characteristics they prefer and value. And then to help in terms of improving the clinical trial experience, and during that kind of peri-approval period, in understanding patients' perspectives on whether or not they're willing, or to what extent they're willing to trade off the benefits, the risks of the product in exchange for the benefits that they would receive. Then that continues in the development. Patients have a role in the development of patient labeling and in other safety communications. And then in the post-marketing period, in managing the risks associated with the patients, associated with the products, as well as in safety reporting. So CIOMS 11 is seeking to develop some very practical guidance to industry as to how and when to involve patients. So this is a really valuable endeavor and one that will lead to some real positive outcomes for industry.
Thank you. And then when the product development cycle is successful, the product comes to the market, and then it's the healthcare professionals, healthcare providers who deal with the medicines and treat the patients. And I think we have also a representative of healthcare providers. So please.
Yes, hello, Corinna Schäfer from the German Agency for Quality in Medicine. We're a physician-led organization and funded by the German Medical Association. This is why I'm also, I've been nominated through the World Medical Association, we are partners of. Yeah, I think, first of all, I really want to congratulate CIOMS for this initiative and bringing the idea of patient involvement forward, because I think from the physician perspective, it's the most important thing you can do, is involve the patient in his treatment, discuss the goals with him, try to understand what matters to him to provide the healthcare that really is important for him. And I'd like to cite a wonderful US physician, Victor Montori, who says that we as physicians have the privilege of the bedside, and understanding this really as a privilege, that you have the chance to provide help to someone who's seeking for help, is so important, that it is self-evident that you have to consider who is in front of you, what are his needs, and what are his goals, what are his circumstances, what are his beliefs, so that you really can try to find the treatment that fits. And when it comes to medication and medication safety, the physician is very important because he's the one who really talks directly to the patient. In the meeting today, we've heard that we've missed one stakeholder group that's quite as important. It's the pharmacist, who also talks to the patient when he gets into the pharmacy, talking to them. But those two, and also the carers, the nurses, and so on. So all those who are involved directly with talking to patients, they're very important to understand how a medication worked, what were the problems. And so therefore it's very important to create an atmosphere where the patient really speaks up and says what matters to him, says what he experienced or she experienced. But one thing that we should not forget is it is important to encourage patients to report everything that they have seen with the treatment, but it's not like shifting the responsibility to the patient. It's still our responsibility of those who deliver healthcare, that the healthcare that we suggest really suits the patient. So principally, it's very important to involve patient, and I've learned today that it's very important to describe how we do it. It's no question whether to involve patients or not. The question is how to make patient involvement meaningful. Therefore, we need some standards and we need some procedures that assure that a patient involvement is not tokenistic, and I'm looking forward to the paper that you're coming up with the guideline and some descriptions maybe providing concrete advice and guidance to those who are in charge of patient involvement. And one last thing, an idea I learned today, that there are so many people out in the field that are working on patient involvement. I think it's very important that this chance that CIOMS is an international organization, is kind of a network, that we try to connect still more and try to collect all these helpful resources that are already out there. And if an international organization can provide all this, I think this is a perfect thing to do.